Welcome back to Chapter 9. In this video, we'll talk about some guided choices for forms. First off are radio buttons. Allows for the selection of one item per radio group, which is identified by the name. Keep in mind that some values are 1 or 0, or you can override with the value attribute. Labels are usually after the input type, and the checked is a Boolean value for a pre-checked or pre-selected radio button. To give you a good idea about what this looks like, let's take a look at this radio group right here. You'll notice that the input types are fairly similar. The name is the same, the value is different, and the ID is different. If you recall from before when I said that the name and the ID should be the same, this is one case where they should not be the same, only because the name for all the radio buttons should be the same to identify a group. Once you change the name of different radio items, then that becomes a different selection for the radio group itself, which means that multiple items can be selected. In this case, all of the items that have the name color will be selected for this radio group, and the value will be red, blue, or green based on the information provided. Also keep in mind that the label has the for attribute that matches the ID of the input. In this case, the label is after the input. In previous examples, the label was before the input, but in this case, most radio buttons are located to the left of the actual label. So in this case, we're putting the label after the input, so the label appears to the right of the radio button. Next are select menus or drop-down boxes. This allows for the selection of one item in a list by default. Notice that this does use the select type or select tag versus input. This collapses before and after a selection, and you can select multiple values with the multiple attribute. So, once you get into select or drop-down boxes, you must pick different items inside that are called options. These options are inside of a select tag and a few other items, but mainly the select tag, and the options are identified by the option tag. If the option has no set value, it will default to the label of it. To give you a good example, in that second example, option red, the default value for that is red. You can group multiple values in select drop-down boxes with opt group. We'll get to that once we get into the Code With Me videos. To give you a good example of a select menu, this is a very simple selection using the same colors from before and allows you to have a label, select a color, and the select menu, basically allowing you to group different options with values for one person to select. In this case, they're selecting a color of red, blue, and green. So in the image below, you see that it has the drop-down box. Nothing is selected except the first option, red. Once you click on it, the label has the for with the ID of the select, which works out nicely. Keep that in mind when it's working. And when someone clicks on the drop-down box or the select menu, the different options are available. In this case, red is selected. You can also select blue or green. Let's look at a more complicated example using the opt group or option group. Again, the label has the same for attribute as the ID of the select, and we're using the opt group to group these different items based on, in this case, the warm or coolness of the color. So red, yellow, orange, and warm, and blue, green, and violet, and cool. So in this case, when someone selects a color, and since red is already selected because it's the first available option, they click on it, and now warm and cool become option groups. You can't select them, but it just allows you to see what a group of that option would be like. So in this case, you can select from the warm or the cool grouping. Let's take a look at this example right here. When I mentioned before of the option having the default value, in this case, you can change the value and then change the text of the option itself. So if you select, for example, the color I like red. That means that the actual value being passed to the form handler will be red. If you select blue as my favorite, the value will be blue. Or green, why green? Hulk green. The value will be green, not the whole entire phrase, just the value that's being passed. Next are checkboxes. This is an input type. Keep that in mind, not a select or anything else. This is an input type. This allows the option to select multiple preset values. If no value is provided, the default value of checked will be applied to the checked boxes and the value of null to the unchecked. So basically, if a box is unchecked, that information will not be passed to the form handler. So if you see things such as I agree to the terms and conditions, or you select your favorite range of items or your favorite selection of apparel, then based on that, that is a checkbox. Next, we have data lists. This is actually used in combination to the input text field. So when you have this, you want to make sure that the list attribute for the input type matches the ID of a data list. A data list helps users autocomplete a field, or they can provide their own answer. This is combined with the text field. It is not by itself. You can use options as well to define the list inside of a data list. So once you have the data list set up, for example, this one right here, you have the input type, the ID and the for match, and then you have the attribute list, in this case, list of colors. The data list has the ID of list of colors as well, for red, blue, and green. So if someone were to go in and start typing a color, see the list, you would see that red, blue, and green show up, which means that they can go ahead and pick one of those, or they can start typing, and the data list will automatically pre-select the best matching option. This also allows them to create their own value as well, as it is not an option available, but they can still submit it. That's it for this video. If you have any questions regarding this or anything in Chapter 9, please send me an email or hit me up on Twitter, and I'll get back to you with the best possible answer.